ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader.
But the fundamental problem in the UK today is there is a structural imbalance of power and wealth. It's been happening for decades, it's getting worse, and we have to do something about it.
Get ready for a summer of discontent.
Well, I don't know how long they'll go on. When we get a negotiated settlement at our members' support, then the strikes will cease. But at the moment, we've got a big gap to bridge, and we're not near that at the moment. So the strikes will go on until we get a settlement.
You might have been planning for a relaxing August. A bit of travel, days out with friends and family, just chilling out and enjoying the good weather. Well, it's not going to be that easy, unfortunately.
This is not a drill.
'Tis the season for industrial action. TfL, train operators, bus drivers, airport and airline staff, ferries and sea container port staff, and even barristers are all getting in on it. Don't worry though, we're here to give you the ultimate guide on everything you need to know about the summer of strikes. Katie Strick is commissioning editor and senior feature writer at the Evening Standard.
So if anyone has read any newspaper or news website in the last few weeks or months, it's impossible to have missed all these strikes that have been happening. There's been 5 tube strikes already this year. There have been train strikes. We've probably all been affected in some way. And then in recent weeks, we've also had Royal Mail, even Amazon workers last week at one of the warehouses. There's just been so many different industries. It's impossible to have missed these headlines, but it really feels like August is a melting pot of a lot of them, and a lot of them are happening at the same time, which I'll talk about in more detail. So it does really feel like it's not just the heat wave that's getting people hot under the collar. It is the cost of living crisis, and London's workers are angry.
Why is this all happening at once? Is it just a sign of the times?
Absolutely. I think without a doubt, it's this cost of living crisis that we are all very much feeling at the moment. And, you know, it's being felt by everyone across all industries. And it obviously just so happens that these professions striking are the ones that feel able to strike and can make an impact and have the unions representing them and supporting them in it. But we're all feeling it. And, you know, it's just soaring inflation rates. And despite companies offering pay rises, most of those pay rises, it seems, aren't in line with inflation. They're still below their inflation. So essentially, it equates to a pay cut.
Right, let's go through all the strikes that we know of so far in more detail now. TfL, when are their next strikes and what are they all about?
Yes, so TfL, they're again striking over pay, as most of these industries are, but there are other reasons in the mix for quite a few of these industries. And for TfL, there's been some proposed job cuts and some changes to their pension, which some reviews have sort of said is very generous and much more generous, their pension scheme, compared to Network Rail and the civil service and things. So that's being under review, which people working for TfL a lot of them are not happy about. So the strike next Friday, the 19th, will be the 5th time that they have struck this year. And yeah, it's all about that. And it's 10,000 workers who are due to be taking part. All TfL lines apart from the Elizabeth line, DLR and trams are likely to be affected. And as we've seen with all the previous strikes, it's big 24-hour strike and probably will spill it over into the next morning as well. So all fun and games there, and very difficult if you're trying to get around London. Yeah.
And how about train operators?
So on the trains, back to August the 19th, unfortunately, we're going to have tubes down that day, but we are also going to have trains down that day. So it's going to be really tricky, I think, if you live in London to get around, really. It's going to be very tricky. But that's not the only date on the trains. So the first one comes this Saturday, August the 13th. So definitely worth looking. I'm travelling down to Devon that day, and I've one of the lucky people who seems to be hopefully getting away with going on Southwestern trains down to Exeter. But I think a lot of the key train operators are striking that day. So definitely worth checking in advance. And then, yes, from August the 18th, so the following week, there are then 3 consecutive days of train strikes. And again, it's complicated. There are lots of different train operators running these, and it's various different unions that are striking on different days. So worth checking in advance. But the biggest union that is striking is the RMT. Many of you you will recognise the sort of main face of the RMT. Mick Lynch was this sort of straight-talking veteran unionist who really started to make headlines in June. You might remember he sort of did these very brutal takedowns of TV hosts like Kay Burley and Piers Morgan, and he had this amazing interview style where he just really kept his cool and stayed incredibly unflustered considering who he was talking to a lot of the time, people like Piers Morgan.
In other bad news for anyone trying to get about, bus drivers are also going to be striking, aren't they?
Yes, more bad news there. Again, circle August the 19th in your diaries because they are now also striking, these bus drivers, with 1,600 drivers from London United, which is a major bus driver employer, set to strike over 2 days. So yes, the first being August the 19th. And also keep an eye out for later strikes. So Arriva, who are doing lots of strikes up in the northwest at the moment, they are currently voting on separate strike action that would affect bus services in North London in September.
And on to air travel now. Airport and airline staff are taking action as well, aren't they?
Yes, I can't believe I'm saying this because everyone who's tried to go on holiday this year has been very aware of the chaos in Europe's skies at the moment. So airports and airlines have been massively affected by sort of knock-on effects from the pandemic and high demand and low supply of staff. So I think it's no surprise in many ways that their staff are striking, but it's really quite concerning for anyone wanting to travel because you just think we do not need anything else affecting our attempts to try and get abroad this summer. But yeah, their staff are just saying they are exhausted and tired and underpaid and badly treated, and angry passengers a lot of the time I think have been looking for someone to blame, and most of them are saying that they have any day off they get called in to work overtime because there's just such a shortage of staff. So at the moment it's looking like a lot of it Spanish cabin crew and Spanish staff from Ryanair and EasyJet who begin their strikes this week, but it also looks as though there are quite a few other airlines planning potential strikes in the next few months.
And if you thought that was all the methods of transport ticked off, ferries and sea container port staff will also be striking. Just explain the background to this.
So bad news as well, having just said about airports, and you might want to plan a staycation because of the strikes there. If you are planning to go to somewhere like the Isle of Wight, you also might want to check not only train times and train strikes, but also ferries. So Red Funnel, who run the ferries between Southampton and the Isle of Wight, 120 of their workers, so 20% of their staff, are also going to be striking. And you might have seen it in the news last week when it was Cows Week, which normally attracts sort of 100,000 visitors a year and was massively disrupted. Yeah, they are striking again, and it's all about pay once again, but also conditions. So a lot of them are saying that they have no cooking facilities in their accommodation. They're only paid for the hours they're on board the ferry and not the other hours they're traveling. They're talking about things like ant infestations and people walking in when they're trying to sleep. So yeah, not too fun for Red Funnel staff, but also not too fun for anyone trying to travel with Red Funnel. And then container ports as well, which might be one you'd sort of scroll past if you're reading about the news at the moment. It doesn't feel like one that would immediately affect you, but actually if it does go ahead later this month, it sounds as though it could be one that really affects a lot of us because it's going to affect the UK supply chain a lot. So it's staff at Felixstowe, which is Europe's 8th largest container port and the UK's biggest. So 48% of the UK's goods imported in containers arrive into Felixstowe. So if the risks of us going to a standstill are true, then yeah, we could be in for some serious delays there to supply chains, which is also quite concerning.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear more of our guide to the summer of discontent. Whilst you're here, why not give the leader a rate and follow? Welcome back. So, Katie, there's also a non-travel related strike happening soon. Barristers are also going to be taking action. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a different one, isn't it? Their picket lines look quite different with them there in their wigs and their robes compared to some of the sort of more traditional transport strikes. They are striking, and again, it's over pay, but more specifically, it's over these sort of legal aid fees and this legal aid funding that they receive. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of you people might assume that barristers are very well paid, but they're sort of trying to make it clear that actually after expenses and a lot of these fees, their actual annual income can be as low low as £12,000 in the first 3 years of working, once you've taken out all those expenses. So it's apparently driving 22% of junior criminal barristers to leave since 2016. So 8 out of 10 of them say they support the strikes. They say it's about these fees, but they also say they're taking on extra hours to deal with rising caseloads and court closures. And obviously that's massively affecting the court system at the moment, and very few cases are being seen because so many of them are striking. So people who oppose the strikes are saying, you know, think of victims here, but they're saying actually it's not just about pay, it's about redressing this sort of shortfall in the supply of barristers, otherwise we won't have any of them working anyway.
And all of these strikes are just all the ones that we know of at the moment. There could be more announced, and it could carry on past the summer too.
Absolutely. I mean, Mick Lynch, who's head of the RMT, is already saying he's refusing to accept a raw deal. And if these next few strikes don't work out, no doubt they will be striking again. This is TfL's 5th strike coming up. So they have no fear of continuing if they don't get what they want. And there's already, as I mentioned earlier, sort of rumours of Arriva, the bus driver company, striking in September. And as we know, airports and airlines are really struggling, and it really wouldn't surprise me if those strikes really continue. At the moment, they're already saying that there are 3 72-hour strikes for Spanish pilots from EasyJet from August the 12th, and Ryanair are beginning a 4-day strike as well, but they're certainly talking about more in the future if they don't work out.
So what's the advice then? Is it just plan ahead and hope for the best?
I think so. I would say plan ahead. Keep checking. We will be monitoring it on the Evening Standard and keeping people posted about the train and tube strikes. And I would say if you don't own a bike already, it might be the time to think about buying one.
You can read more from Katie Strick and everything about all the strikes happening this summer on our website, standard.co.uk. And that's it from The Leader. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.